I am indeed the CEO of Dentsu Aegis in the US. This is my second week in the US, in the greatest country on earth, living in New York, the greatest city on earth. Now, I know New York is the greatest city on earth because every New Yorker I've met since I've moved here has told me it is. Including my favorite, who was the very nice lady who I spoke to, who was supposed to be arranging the installation of my cable. And as I lost my temper, she said, "Sir, you need to calm down. You are living in the greatest country on earth, in the best city in the world. Everything will be okay." So there you go. Anyway, the brief today from Jeremy was very simple, really. I think he said, can you give everybody a view from the top? So in a moment, I'm going to give you a view from the top. Can you contextualize that view in terms of iProspect? So can you talk to everybody in the audience about iProspect in the context of our business and why it's so important? And can you not do 20 cred slides? So here's the first cred slide. But it is actually the only one. So very briefly, and in probably less than a minute, I'll tell you who we are. Dentsu Aegis is, depending on who's doing the measuring, the third largest marketing services network holding group. It was born 2 years ago out of the merger of Aegis Media and Dentsu, which many of you I'm sure know, is a very large, all-consuming, incredibly amazing, super diversified business in Japan. And we are 2 years into that relationship. Within our business, we have 8 network brands. We call them network brands because they are globally networked. They include Dentsu, the main business in Japan. They also include an agency network around Dentsu Media, Kara, which is a media network, Visium, a media network, iProspect, which you're familiar with, Isobar, which is digital creative, McGarry-Bow and Above Line Creative, Posterscope, Out of Home. We then have a whole collection of sub-brands, which include Amplify, our trading entity, Amnet, programmatic, Data to Decisions, which is effectively a marketing effectiveness business, Mitchell Communications PR, PS Live, which is experiential, and finally 360i, a full-service digital agency primarily operating in the United States of America, and we have 55 other local brands which feed into that network. That is the end of my creds, you'll be delighted to hear. So the first thing I want to talk to you about when I think about what we talk about at the top of our organization is the environment we're currently in today. And I'll get on to things like data and programmatic and digital in a moment. But the first thing I would call out is we are living in a very, very strange situation. It's a very interesting time. You have arguably unprecedented, certainly since the Second World War, geopolitical pessimism based on geopolitical problems, and you have, conversely, actually increasing economic optimism. So you go back 2 years ago and people talked about Brazil, they talked about Russia. Europe wasn't, doing particularly well, but go back another 3 or 4 years, Europe was pretty vibrant. So and the world in general was a fairly stable place. But it isn't anymore. And actually, the point I want to make today is in our business, when we talk about growth, which just like all of your businesses is incredibly important, it's actually quite difficult to understand where it's going to come from. And why I think it's interesting just to bring it up today is Europe is effectively stagnant, so there is not going to be a lot of growth in Europe. And China, whilst it's big, has huge headwinds, both in terms of the growth of the economy, which is slowing rapidly, but also in terms of just the environment for doing business. So what that actually means for our business is the main area for growth and the main area for focus and investment and driving forward our business is the United States. It is the biggest economy in the world, all of you know that, but it is also the world headquarters of innovation. It's where most of the global advertisers are effectively either born or situated. And it is the home of the large-scale digital media owners, such as Google and Facebook. So the first thing to stress is the US, for our business, is absolutely paramount. No pressure for me then. The next thing I'd like to talk about very briefly is ad spend growth. Global ad spend growth is broadly forecast by our group to be at 4%, and other groups will forecast something similar, as will sort of third-party independents. Digital is forecast to be 17.3% this year. Social, mobile, and video is forecast to be more than 50%. And that's a bit of a problem, potentially. Because according to Google and Facebook, none of us are actually ready for it. Whenever I talk to senior managers at Facebook, whenever I talk to senior managers at Google, they consistently call out the challenge that we face in terms of having the right people with the right skills to prepare ourselves for the future that's coming down the road. And in fact, I was sat on the plane this morning, and I was reading the newspaper, and Google, literally, there was an article from Google saying that the world is not ready for mobile, and brands aren't ready for mobile. And that is a really interesting thing for us, because the way that manifests itself in our business is talent. So the view from the top, the view from our business is we have a war for talent. We need more people with the skills that we need to exploit the opportunities that we know exist. We need to motivate, mobilize, recruit, and retain that talent in our business at a time when it's increasingly difficult to do that, in part because of the pressures that come from Google and Facebook, who, as well as pointing out we don't have enough staff, constantly hire them as well. So, that has to be factored in. So for us, one of the key factors in our business is how we manage and mobilize our talent. And it's also quite important when you look at the landscape of our business and you start to understand why iProspect is so important to the future of our business. Because in iProspect, both globally and here in the US, we do have large numbers of people with the skills that we believe we need to exploit the opportunities that are coming down the road. And again, I think people have touched on it already. I'm afraid I wasn't here for the entire conference, and indeed for most of it, actually. But everything is speeding up. I remember when I used to present, when I've had my first job in digital, sort of 15, 20 years ago, and we talked a lot about, the next 5 years will be faster than the previous 3, and, everything's getting more difficult and more complicated, but it is true. But everything is speeding up and going at breakneck speed. And for us, again, thinking about how we think about these things as a business, the challenges we face are, which businesses should we acquire? How do we integrate those businesses into our business to deliver integrated specialisms to clients like yourselves, and do it in a timely fashion so that we stay ahead of the curve? How do we organize and structure our business for a new big data world? How do we mobilize our business for an increasing sort of headcount where we have different people with different talents and different motivations? So it isn't just about the marketing side of the business, it's about the organization, the recruitment, the retention, everything. And we have to think about all that stuff all of the time, and we have to think about it more and more, because it's just speeding up and speeding up. And clearly, as a result of that, and of course, all of you know this, the digital economy is disrupting everything. But my point here is, even 2 years ago, that wasn't true. We used to work with advertisers. We would work with many brands in different parts of the world, and they would happily say, and they were probably right, that right now, we're not that worried. Our business isn't being turned upside down by digital. The effectiveness of our brand marketing and our advertising, its ability to cut through to our consumers, our ability to perform in our competitive set, whilst it's challenging, we're pretty comfortable. It's almost unheard of to have those conversations now. You may agree with this. You may think it's slightly melodramatic, but I think it's just worth reflecting for a moment that if you're not a startup, it is possible to make the case that perhaps you're a turnaround. And certainly when you look at a number of the legacy businesses that we work with, there is a huge amount of evidence that they are successfully turning around their businesses. But the way in which they have gone to market and the way in which they have thought about the challenges that they will face in a digital world is to change everything. Is to restructure how they go to market, is to launch new product offerings, is to change the way in which they organize their people. And so not everybody is being as successful as other people, not everybody has the same challenges, but many of our big legacy advertisers and brands, some of whom I'm sure represented this room, are in the business of turning their businesses around for a new, exciting and digital world. And some of the results actually are quite spectacular. the fastest growing e-commerce retailer in the world is Macy's, which I think is fantastic. I was at the CBS upfronts yesterday. The CEO of CBS got up and said, we are the 10th most visited website in the United States of America. And they're doing a pretty good job now of monetizing it beyond advertising with pay-to-play and all sorts of other things. So there's lots of great examples of businesses that are successfully turning their businesses around. But, as I said, you can definitely make the case that if you're not a startup, you're in some sort of turnaround. Now, this is a particularly difficult chart for me to present because, as well as my other responsibilities, I stupidly 2 years ago volunteered to be the chairman of the Data Council in Dentsu Aegis, which is where we bring together all of the different people in our businesses, particularly those businesses that have a vested interest in data, including the likes of iProspect. And we get together and we talk about what our strategy is and what we're trying to do. And we wrestle, like everybody else, with big data, the proliferation of data, the existence of data, all the data out there that you have that we want to borrow to do better work for you. And all of the media owner data that we want to take and contextualize and add to things and to your data and to our data and to spin it back out the other door to deliver better, more targeted, more effective advertising solutions. And it's very, very, very difficult for us to do. And I think where we've got to as a business and where we've started to really, level out on the whole big data piece is actually big data isn't the answer. It may be the answer for some people, but it's not the answer for us. It's not what we do. It's not our core competency. And I don't think there are too many clients who want to come to agency holding groups and hand over the big data question to us. But I think this is what we should be doing. And I think this is what we do. And I think going forward for us, big data, our interpretation of it should be all about personalization at scale. And iProspect in particular is the business in our holding group that is leading the charge on doing that, working with many of you around the world and also here in America. So personalization at scale is the next great frontier for us, and it's the next great frontier, I believe, for iProspect. And the next big thing for iProspect, which I think Ben Wood, who was here either yesterday or the day before, may have talked about, is we want to blend a bit of science with art. So today we announced in London that we are acquiring John Brown Publishing, which is a large international branded content and publishing business. And the ambition for that business is to fully integrate it into the iProspect offering to be able to deliver digital content at scale, produced by professionals, seamlessly integrated into the iProspect stack and the iProspect offering, and with the ambition that we will be able to then measure effectively some of that wonderful content that will now be produced by professionals, which of course historically has not been our core competency. So the next great leap for iProspect, and it's a huge focus for us in terms of our group strategy, is to bring that content closer to the iProspect proposition, and as I said, to blend science with art. And we're extremely excited about that, and I hope over time some of you will get a chance to work with that business, and Jeremy and his team will be able to bring those ideas and that competency into some of the conversations, and I hope it will resonate with some of you. iProspect, for me anyway, is a passion that's very close to my heart. I actually founded a business probably 10 years ago in the UK. I sold it to the group. That business was iProspect. I do have a background in search and performance marketing. And I think, when I stand up here on the stage, I did come last year, and I sat through the whole conference in Austin, and I see the engagement, and I see the work, and I see some of the great relationships that we've been able to foster. I realise that in iProspect, in Dentsu Aegis, we're very, very lucky. We're very lucky to have iProspect in a business. And it's my job, and the job of the rest of the exec board, to invest in that business, to grow that business, to support the people, to support Jeremy in delivering really great work, so we stay relevant, so we stay valuable to you as our client partners, and so that we continue to sort of drive and innovate in what obviously is an incredibly fast-moving and dynamic marketplace. So iProspect in our network is a bit of a jewel in the crown. Yes, I am slightly biased, because I have a background in it, but we are, as I said, extremely lucky to have them in the group. And I'm extremely proud to be able to say that I launched a business that became iProspect, and now I get to work with Jeremy. And in the US, we do have the most sophisticated, most well-developed, and I think the best iProspect that we have anywhere around the world. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for indulging me. I hope you've all had a wonderful time. We appreciate your support. Thank you to everybody who's turned out. And as I said, I hope it's been a great conference and a great few days, and I hope everyone's looking forward to having a party tonight and a very good time. And as a Brit, clearly, I will never have stood in the front of or in the way of anybody and a glass of alcohol. So I'm going to stop there now and hand over to Jeremy, who I think is going to close us. So thank you very much.